Okay, so are we live now? Excellent. And people are coming in the door, so we are live at this point, correct? All right, welcome everybody. We're just going to give it another minute for people to get in the virtual door. Okay, Liz, do you think we're good to start?
Yeah, I think so. Why not? It's hard to tell, but sometimes these things take a minute, but I think we're in good shape.
Okay, excellent. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our first ANJAC Roundtable of the new year. So let me start by saying Happy New Year to everyone. We are thrilled to be here speaking about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, getting cleaner air through electric vehicles. The transportation sector is one of the most important sectors for us to pay attention to with regard to ending or controlling the climate crisis. So thank you so much for being here with us this evening. And thank you to all of our speakers and to ANJAC staff. We have Elizabeth Ritter, Sheila Baker-Grajal, and Cheryl Reardon here with us this evening to answer your questions and help manage this event. My name is Jennifer Coffey, and I have the great pleasure of serving as ANJAC's Executive Director. So I want to thank all of you for everything you do in your communities with ANJAC and with other community partners. And I am struggling to advance my slides. Let me go at it again and see if Zoom will cooperate. All right, I promise we practiced this and it worked a minute ago. And now it's not. So I apologize and I am going to riff. So thank you everybody.
Advance your slides?
No, it won't let me advance my slides. My official nonsense of Zoom today, because I've been using it all day, is that it's having a TOOD. And so it will not allow me, for whatever particular reason, to advance my slides. So I'm just going to stop. I don't need slides. So thank you everybody for being here with us today. For those of you who know what an ANJAC is, welcome and thank you for returning. For those of you who don't, ANJAC is the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, and we are now celebrating our 54th year in operation. We are here as a resource for you. Our mission at the fundamental level is to help municipal officials, particularly environmental commissioners, to make good decisions about the environment for their communities. And so we work with environmental commissions, we work with green teams, open space committees, elected officials, and we're thrilled always to hear from you. One of the best ways to reach us these days, because many of us will continue to be working at home, is at info@anjac.org, and one of our staff members will put that in the chat, info@anjac.org. I also want to call.
I'm going to share your screen, Jen.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm going to get your PowerPoint up and going. So sorry, of course, it took a minute.
Wonderful. I'll just continue to talk. ANJAC has two primary signature programs, the first of which is our Fundamentals for Effective Environmental Commissioners. Wow, it's working for you. It just doesn't want to work for me. Thanks, Liz. I appreciate that. Our fundamentals for effective environmental commissioners course will be held on March 21st, 22nd, and 23rd this year. It will be virtual. So if you find yourself, we can just stay on this. If you find yourself new to an environmental commission and are asking, what the heck did I get myself into? We can help you understand what your roles and responsibilities as an EC member are, how to review a site plan, how the heck do you review a stormwater plan if you're not an engineer. Our other signature program is Environmental Congress this fall. So that will be our 50th annual Environmental Congress this October. And so we'll get those dates out to you. We encourage you to sign up for our programs again by emailing info@anjac.org. And you can sign up for our alerts by letting that email know you'd like to be on our list. And then you'll get lots of information about programs like today. So I want to thank all of you. Many of you are donors to ANJAC, and we could not do the work that we do to support more than 300 environmental commissions and even more green teams and municipal officials throughout the state without your contribution. So thank you for everything that you do. We ask that you continue to consider giving to ANJAC, and you can do so at ANJAC/donate. Liz, let's go to the next slide. We are thrilled to have, as I said, more than 300 environmental commissions as members of ANJAC, or that we work with at ANJAC. And we would like to encourage you at the beginning of the year, if your EC has not renewed your membership yet at this point, to please go ahead and move forward with renewing your membership so that you can continue to attend programs like this evening at no additional cost. And you will get our action alerts and our ANJAC report. So you can go to anjac.org/memberships to get more information there. Green teams, councils, historic committees, open space committees can also become members of ANJAC and attend our programming. So we welcome all of you. Next slide.
Oh, sure. Can see the thing. Oh, there we go.
We're working on it. There we go. So as a member of ANJAC, you also are entitled to copies of the ANJAC report. This is our quarterly magazine that provides in-depth stories about work that's being done around the state. Environmental commissioners who are doing work, open space committees, also gives you a peer into what's happening in the State House and with regulations and how they will affect your municipality. Anyone who gives $50 a year or more to ANJAC also receives the ANJAC report. Next slide. So again, my deep, deep thank you to all of you for everything that you do, for educating, for working against increasing the impacts of the climate crisis, for empowering your local communities to connect and work on issues together, protecting and restoring our local environment. New Jersey is a wonderful place to live, and that's because of the work and dedication that you put into it. So thank you. I believe that's all I have, Liz, and I'd like to turn it back over to you. Thank you for
so
helping
much
with the slide assist. Have a great program. Thank you to our speakers for being here.
Yes, exactly. I do want to thank our speakers in advance. It's been really wonderful and having such a great response to tonight's program. So I'm going to introduce the speakers, and then they will get started with their formal presentations. We will have plenty of time at the end of this for Q&A, so you can type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer them, and we will be verbally asking the questions of the many of the questions of the speakers at the end of all the presentations. So we are happy tonight to welcome Eve Gable Frank of Gable Associates, and she's part of Charge EVC. Doug O'Malley is from Environment New Jersey and also part of running Charge EVC. And then we're delighted to have Benjamin Rich, who's the co-chair of the Montclair Environmental Commission, also joining us to present. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it over to Eve and Doug now.
All right, let's see how my screen share goes. Can everyone see me on full screen?
Perfect. Yes.
Yes.
Great. So hi, everyone. Introducing myself again, I'm Eve Gable Frank. I work with Charge EVC. We also have Doug O'Malley here, who serves as president of Charge EVC. So we're sort of going to be covering the state of New Jersey when it comes to electric vehicles. First, just some quick background on Charge EVC. Who are we? We are a not-for-profit business association. We have all the utilities in the state. We have the automotive dealer associations, OEMs, so companies that manufacture charging equipment, tech companies, third-party suppliers, and then nonprofit environmental labor community organizations. AMJEC is one of our members. We also have municipalities and environmental commissions who support us. So if any of you want to get involved, we'd be happy to talk to you, either just getting involved through supporting us or having us keep you up to date on what's going on as this market progresses in New Jersey. So I will make sure you all have my email, and anyone who wants to reach out, please feel free to do. What we do, we spend all of our time with that really diverse group of members. We have about 40 members working to accelerate and expand EV adoption in New Jersey. We do that by developing programs and policies that advance vehicle electrification in the state. We do that just on the state level. We also have a sister organization, Charge EVC Pennsylvania, but they're two separate organizations because we're really focused on state level work. We do a lot of research, so we do cost benefit analysis. We have a roadmap for what policies should be in place as we try to advance this market. So we use that research to inform policies and programs and really do some really effective advocacy with this wide group. I'm going to do a quick lesson plan. I know there are people on this call who are really knowledgeable in this area and some who are a little less knowledgeable. So just going to start with the basics here. What are EVs? So light duty electric vehicles. I'm sure all of us have heard of the traditional hybrid. The most common one is the Prius. That is a vehicle that has a battery, but it runs on gas. The battery also runs on gas. So when we're talking about policies and programs, we're not really talking about hybrid vehicles. We are talking about vehicles that actually plug in to the car. So a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, the electric supplements the fuel. It has a smaller battery, 20 to 50 miles. So these are vehicles that you can't drive long distances just on electric, but you can drive around town, or they sort of make sense for someone who's you know, not comfortable yet, nervous to take the next step and go all electric, and they might want to buy a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And then there's a full battery electric vehicle, which is what most of our work is focused on. These are all electric cars. They have a larger battery from 150 to 350 miles. And these cars fully rely on battery power and being charged. Just wanted to also throw in a little bit about medium and heavy duty electric vehicles. I live in Highland Park. The past 3 weeks, I've been seeing these electric Amazon trucks driving around. So I point to them and I'm like, this is really happening. So this is a newer focus area for us. Electrifying these larger vehicles, trucks, buses, delivery vans is really important when you start to think about overburdened communities and urban areas where people have significantly more adverse negative health impacts from air quality. Focusing in on electrifying these larger, heavily polluting vehicles is a really important focus. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. How EVs are fueled. most charging happens where cars stay parked. So at home, at work, you can see there it says about 95% of the energy for the vehicles happens there. That is not to say that that's everyone's situation, and it's definitely more complex for some people. New Jersey is a really densely populated state. There are a lot of urban areas. There are a lot of people who don't own their homes. There are a lot of people who live in apartment buildings, so they can't have a charger in their garage. But the majority of people are able to go home at night and plug in, and are able to go to work during the day and plug in. So, so it's important to think about the majority of people who are driving electric vehicles. They don't have the same behavior patterns in fueling their vehicle as they would with a internal combustion engine gas car. They're not going to the gas station whenever their car is about to hit empty. They're going to go home every night. And once you sort of get in your pattern of driving these vehicles, you realize, hey, you know, I don't actually drive that many miles per day. I'm going to charge my car every 3 days, and I'm comfortable there. I know in reality, sometimes people are a little nervous when they're stepping into this new thing, but that really is how it is for most people. And then on the right here, you can see it says charging en route. Public chargers are really important when it comes to that other small portion of the population that can't charge at home. And also those times when someone has a charger in their garage, but they're, you know, on a road trip, or they had to, you know, make a pit stop and run out of charge. So one of the things that we'll talk about that there's now a lot of investment happening in is putting in a fast charging network on highly traveled roads in New Jersey. And there's federal activity happening to make sure that there's a fast charging network across the country, to sort of ensure that there is charging for everyone, not just sort of the majority of people in the majority of cases. And I have to say, my colleague Mark Warner always says this metaphor, and it's great. Public charging is like a public bathroom. You don't always need one, but when you need one, you really need one. So I had to throw that in there. Why EVs matter. This is really big, and I think the whole story is sort of in this table. The transportation sector makes up the majority of emissions in New Jersey, 45% of the emissions. It should be the #1 thing that we're attacking when we're trying to lower greenhouse gas emissions. So there is a ton of work going on at the state level. So I'm going to go quickly through sort of what's going on policy-wise, and what the electric vehicle market looks like right now in New Jersey. First, biggest thing, something that we spent a lot of time working on, was the EV law that was passed in January 2020. It set goals for New Jersey Transit and state fleet electrification. One of the big things it did was establish an EV rebate program. So it put $300 million over 10 years in a fund for people to get rebates off the purchase of their vehicles. And then it also did a few other things, but I'm highlighting here. It also set goals for EV adoption. So I put some numbers here: at least 330,000 registered EVs by 2025, at least 2 million by 2035, and then at least 85% of sold leased vehicles by 2040. So giving you a snapshot, I'll put this table up. As of June 2022, this is not current, we're still waiting for end of year numbers, there were 80,000 EVs on the road. We're hoping that when we see those end of year numbers, it's closer to 100,000. But that's where we are right now. I also wanted to just show sort of geographical distribution of the registrations. It's probably not surprising to most people that those densely populated areas where people aren't driving as far and where people have more access to public charging, there's more electric vehicle adoption. Other goal that I wanted to point out is it set goals for charging infrastructure. So at least 1,000 publicly accessible level 2 chargers by 2025, and at least 400 publicly accessible chargers in 200 locations of at least 150 kilowatts. So I went on the DEP's website. It shared that there are currently 720 level 2 chargers and 157 DCFC. I'm going to go back a slide for a second. You'll notice that I put in parentheses here that the DC fast chargers need to be at least 150 kilowatts. That's because this law sort of realized, and we agree with, the standard for something being considered a fast charger can be 50 kilowatts, but it's important that these chargers actually charge vehicles quickly. So it's important that they're at least 150 kilowatts, that people can get in and out of those chargers quickly, and it looks more like a gas station experience. So while this map shows 157 DC fast chargers, we pulled together our own map of where there are currently chargers of 150 kilowatts or more, and there are 34 on this map right now. So a little bit scary, but I'm not scared because there is a ton going on right now, which I'm going to get into and Doug is going to get into, that this is really going to be a big policy focus, and fast chargers are going to start popping up, especially on really highly traveled roadways. Recent market advancements. So I'm going to start with the second one first because it sort of relates to what I was just saying. The federal government established the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, more commonly known as NEVI. So that gave $104 million to New Jersey, $15.4 million in the first tranche, to build out New Jersey's public national charging network. So every state got this money. So this is a network that is meant to be built out federally. And DOT is receiving that money, and they will be establishing a program to give out funds to build out public charging infrastructure in New Jersey. Other things that I wanted to point out was late last year, New Jersey adopted California's advanced clean truck rules. So that put in place a % of sales requirement for vehicle manufacturers starting 2025 through 2035. And this is for trucks. So this is for medium heavy duty trucks. And the third thing I wanted to point out was the IRA that was recently enacted put back in place the federal tax credit of $7,500 per electric vehicle. So, the more incentives, the better there. I think I'm handing it over to Doug now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Eve. And I know we're starting to get some questions in the chat, which is great. We're going to have kind of ample time for Q&A. And now I'm going to run through. And for those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet before, my name is Doug O'Malley. I'm Director of Environment New Jersey. As Eve referenced, I also serve on the board of Charge EVC and serve as the president. And I think we're just at a moment now that's really exciting. A decade ago, you literally would almost throw a party if you saw an EV on the road, and the EV kind of club was small, right? So now we obviously need and want to see the number of EV drivers increase, but we're knocking on the door of 100,000 EVs on the road, which is no small accomplishment. Obviously, I kind of think of EV adoption a little bit like cell phones. right? You know, in maybe the mid 2000s, you knew other people that had cell phones, but you didn't have one. I think what we're going to see over the next decade is a little bit like when the iPhone came out. Of suddenly everyone realized they kind of needed a smartphone, and it was actually a much superior product. So a big way to do that, of course, is EV incentives. So let's Eve, if you could kind of fix the fix the slide deck a little bit and just go to the next step. The next slide would be great. So the short story is that there's a lot of ways to save money when you're buying an electric vehicle, but I just want to kind of emphasize here the savings of an EV in and of itself are pretty substantial. So people, I think, always kind of say, really, you know, can I afford an EV? And there is clearly that upfront cost. And I just want to kind of walk through really quickly just some of the cost savings and the rebates that are available. But I think it's important when we're thinking about an EV to also be thinking about what are the differences of the traditional internal combustion engine vehicle, right? And so those are things that we don't necessarily think about, kind of the cost of oil changes or the cost of repairs. Ongoing maintenance is a huge part of the cost of having a traditional internal combustion engine. You don't see those same expenses, and I think that's something I want to kind of flag, because there is those are the sort of kind of calculations that you want to do, right? You want to figure out how much you're spending with internal combustion engine and how much you can save with an EV. So let me run through this real quick. This has been for years, but you do not pay sales tax when you buy an EV in New Jersey. So right off the top, depending on obviously the car you're buying, that's literally saving you thousands of dollars. Eve was referencing this. The federal tax credit was starting to phase out for some models of electric vehicles. The Inflation Reduction Act essentially brought that back. There's obviously a set of requirements, but we are in a kind of a great sweet spot because the Treasury Department is still working to solidify that. So if you are in the market for an EV, now is the time to buy, because the full range, the full kind of set of credits are eligible currently. And honestly, this is also kind of a do good and do well scenario where we are working to bring back the domestic supply chain for EVs. And that's hugely important, right? Both for manufacturing and then obviously the ability not to have some of the supply chain issues we're running into. The other kind of hugely important credit is the credit that is one of the most generous in the country for New Jersey rebates for buying an EV. And there are some restrictions on here. You can't go and get, the fanciest EV out there, but anything between $40,000 to $55,000, you get a pretty substantial rebate, specifically in the $40,000 range of up to $4,000 off the cost of the EV. That's huge. There's $30 million in this year's fiscal budget. You can actually track the rebate status. It was so popular it would run out. Now, unfortunately, because of supply chain issues, it's not running down as quickly, but that rebate's still there. And it's another kind of just incentive right off the top. There's also money to go to reduce the cost of a charger, $250. And then the last rebate, it depends obviously which utility provider you have, whether it's PS, ENG, whether it's Atlantic City Electric or JCP&L. All the utilities have infrastructure incentive programs, and the PSE&G program is pretty generous. You can get some great off-peak charging rates of 2 cents per kilowatt for off-peak rates, and then also $1,500 off the cost of a level 2 charger. So, there is, again, a little bit of investment. You have to hire an electrician for the most part to do that. But again, you're basically creating a private clean energy gas station in your home. Because especially charging off peak, it's not only good for rates, it's also the cleanest time of the day to charge, because for the most part, there's not other demands on the electric grid. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is important, obviously, for the number of environmental commissioners on the phone. How do you get a charger, for a municipality? And what are the other incentives out there? And then also, what are the incentives to green your fleet? So, The program is not just for one-off purchases for residents, it's also for the BPU as a clean fleet incentive program. So that can be up to $4,000 per vehicle. And I'll talk just a little bit about it. It pays up program because that's a great way to figure out how to get municipal charging. I did want to highlight the electric school bus pilot program. There's an EPA grant program to be able to help your municipality go green and purchase an electric school bus. There's also a pilot program through the New Jersey legislature that DEP is on the cusp of starting to implement to allow towns to apply to get electric school buses, which is hugely important because when we think about electrifying our vehicles, we automatically think of our cars and light trucks. But really, as Eve was referencing, we should be thinking about everything: our New Jersey transit buses, our school buses, delivery vans in our neighborhoods. So it kind of opens up a whole new world. Next slide. So this is what I was starting to reference, that it pays a plug-in program. This is where towns can get $4,000 for their level 2 charging port, and then $200,000 for a fast charger, direct current, fast current charger. There's a multitude of other programs. I was referencing some of the utility programs for commercial and public charging. There's EDA has a fleet program basically for larger trucks and vouchers primarily focused on small businesses. There's also an EV tourism incentive program if you're closer to the shore. And then if you're thinking about kind of the multi-dwelling units, there's also a EV charging program, an incentive program for that run through the BPU. So kind of just a lot of opportunities for incentives, which is exciting because even a few years ago, this didn't exist in the same way. Next slide. All right, let's keep going. So looking forward, I started to kind of reference this a little bit at the beginning, just of the evolution we've seen in the last decade and the evolution to come. And I just wanted to bump down immediately to the consumer interest. And some of this obviously can kind of seem like it's just our friends and people we know that are interested in EVs or have made the transition. But more than 70% of Americans have expressed some level of interest in buying or leasing an EV. And this is hugely important because part of this is the automakers traditionally have not been EV forward. That has started to shift. And so you've started to see huge global commitments, and not just goals and mandates, but literally billions of dollars that are being invested by Ford, by GM, Honda, Nissan, to commit to putting forward a 100% electric vehicle product. And obviously, as you get more vehicles that aren't just the Prius or the Volt that are available, it allows more people to buy those cars, and you create a virtuous cycle. So we are just starting to kind of enter that tipping point in California. 19% of new car sales are electric right now. We obviously want to be seeing that evolution over the next decade, and there are a multitude of states, which we hope New Jersey will be one of them, that are adopting advanced Clean Cars 2 standards to essentially move towards ratcheting up requirements for new electric vehicles and plugins over the course of the next decade plus, until we entirely are moving to electric and plug-in sales in 2035. So New Jersey is not there yet. There's been a number of states that have already adopted that program last year, including our neighbor New York. There's a number of states that are adopting it right now. So this is definitely a key moment to have the Murphy administration continue New Jersey's climate leadership. And also I'll just reference here that it's not just Amazon, it's UPS, it's FedEx, and the United, USPS, our postal service, made a huge investment in electrifying its postal fleet. And currently, today was a comment deadline for a straw proposal from the Board of Public Utilities on making utility investment in medium and heavy duty vehicles. Again, hugely important for New Jersey Transit, for school buses, and for our larger trucks that are on New Jersey roads, both public and private fleets. So we're really starting to see, not just be at the cusp of electrification revolution, but we're starting to kind of pick up that momentum that we need. So let me stop here because there's kind of a lot to learn from individual examples. So let me turn it back. Let me turn it back over, and I believe Ben is going to go next to talk about kind of the local experience.
All right. Thanks, Doug. That's fantastic. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see. And I'll talk about what we're doing in Montclair to electrify our fleet and encourage citizens to do the same. So I'm just going to give you a quick background on myself, talked about why EVs are great, do a little bit of EV myth busting, and then talk about what we're doing in Montclair in terms of what our initiatives are and how we're planning to get some financing. So my name is Ben Rich. I've been rich all my life, and I have been taking EV road trips for a decade, 6 years on a zero electric motorcycle, crossing the country each time. I've ridden through all the lower 48 states. And then a few years ago, I got a mid-range Tesla Model 3. And every year I've been taking a cross-country road trip in that. And I've been to 47 states. Apparently I missed Iowa. So I need to get back there this summer. I'm co-chair of the Montclair Environmental Commission. I'm the sustainability coordinator at MKA, the Montclair Kimberly Academy, where I teach AP Environmental Science and Physics. I'm a certified lead green associate, and I also have worked for Plug in America doing PlugStar training for car dealerships, teaching them how to talk about EV ownership with potential buyers. And I was also featured in Kick Gas, a documentary about a cross-country road trip with a bunch of people going cross-country in electric car, electric motorcycle, electric scooter, and an electric bicycle, all in 2013 when there was scarcely a robust infrastructure for EV charging. And so the photo is me in Colorado, I believe, at the Continental Divide on my electric motorcycle. So why electric vehicles? This I think was covered really well by Eve and Doug, but it's really important. What I do whenever I'm talking to town councilors or citizens from an environmental commissioner standpoint is I always refer back to the IPCC report that says we need to cut our emissions by about 50% by 2030 and by 100% by 2050. And so that is, the scientists of the world have made that statement, which is a bold statement, bolder than any they'd made before. And so that's something that helps ground every decision in science and gives you a lot of credibility. And then hopefully most of you are aware of these things. So I'm going to kind of go through them really quickly so that we can focus on what we're doing in the township and get you the information that I think you're really here for. But why are EVs awesome? They're smooth, they're fast. There's video after video of Teslas just destroying whatever car just came out, like the Dodge Hellcat. And there's a video of a Tesla SUV beating an Italian supercar while towing that same Italian supercar. So there's all sorts of stuff like that. EVs, people say EVs are worse for the environment. They're charged using coal. In New Jersey, we don't have coal. We closed down the last coal-fired power plant May 31st, 2021 or 2022. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding about that because coal used to be 50% of the electrical grid in the United States. There's a great, if you really want to point people towards data, then you can go to the Union of Concerned Scientists, and they show that EVs have about 50% or 57% reduction in overall lifetime emissions. And so, yes, it does take more, as you can kind of see from these graphs. It takes more to initially make the vehicle, but over the lifespan of the vehicle, the vast majority of emissions are from the gasoline or from whatever is powering it. So EVs that are charged using solar are going to have a drastically less impact overall than gas-powered cars. You may have seen some memes with lithium mines that are really scary. Well, most of the time, it's not actually a lithium mine. On the left side there, it claims it's a lithium mine, but that's actually a copper mine in Argentina, I believe. It is the third largest mine in the world, and it has nothing to do with lithium. 85% of lithium in electric car batteries comes from South America brine pools, like the ones on the right. They're in the desert, where there is not as big an impact on the ecosystem. Of course, there is going to be an impact on the ecosystem, but they just let the water evaporate, they pick up the salts, and they turn that into the lithium that we use for batteries. EVs catch fire. Well, there was a study that was done that showed that per 100,000 cars sold, hybrids catch fire about 3,000. There's about 3,500 hybrids that catch fire per 100,000 sold. There's about 1,500 internal combustion engines that catch fire. And per 100,000 sold, there's about 25 EVs that catch fire. So they are 60 times less likely to catch fire than a gas-powered car. So you should be far more concerned by your gas-powered car than an electric car. And then a lot of people continue to say range is an issue, but the average person doesn't travel more than 40 miles or 50 miles in a day. And most EVs have a range greater than 200 miles. So if you are concerned about 50-mile range when you have an EV that has a 200-mile range, you have more problems to worry about than your EV range. So then in terms of difficulty finding charging, DC fast charging is everywhere. And so on the left, you can see the Tesla supercharger map. The red are the ones that are online. Gray are the ones that I have visited. I've visited over 850 Tesla superchargers on my various road trips. Green have not been visited yet by a competitor in this little game, and yellow ones are under construction. So you can see that the US is covered extremely well with Tesla superchargers, which they have said eventually they will open it up to CCS DC fast charging, which means that other vehicles will be able to use them as well. So that's a very robust system. Electrify America charging map is on the right side, and you can see that they already have several ways that you can cross the United States using a non-Tesla electric vehicle. And that is just increasing daily. So DC fast charging for road trips is increasing. And also the other reason people might use DC fast charging is if they live in a place that they can't have charging, like in an apartment building or a condo that doesn't have charging yet, then they might choose to charge using a DC fast charger. But 95% of charging occurs at home. And then here's my quick little, level 1 charging is just a regular plug. Level 2 charging is the one you find in most people's homes and office buildings and so forth. That's 30 amps. And you get generally about 25 to 35 miles per hour. And then DC fast charging is direct current fast charging. And you get 20 miles per minute approximately. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that you're supporting 150 kilowatt DC fast charging, because when I go on my road trips with my Tesla Model 3, if the DC fast charging goes below 100 kilowatts, then at this point, I consider that kind of slower than I want it to be. So, so that's good. You can find, so now to focus on what we're doing in Montclair. So I just went to plugshare.com, which is the primary place where most people find their charging information. It is crowdsourced, and you can get a lot of great information to tell you whether a charging station works really well or not. But I went to PlugShare and looked at Montclair, and here you can see there's a variety of charging stations that are up and running. Level 2, there are some, so the green is public level 2 chargers, the orange is public DC fast chargers, blue is residential level 2 chargers that they've offered to the public. So like my house is listed here. If you get stuck and need a charge, you can contact me via PlugShare and ask if you can use my charging station. There are so many public charging stations around that you would really not need to do that, but I did that just as a gesture. So we have good public charging available already. We've been working at this for quite a while, but there's always room to improve. Now, the majority of people who come and are going to use these chargers are not Montclair residents, because as was stated before, the vast majority of charging occurs at home. So anyone who lives within like a 50-mile range is not going to need public level 2 charging most of the time. The people who will need it are people coming in from out of town, or maybe they've had a long day doing lots of errands and then they need to charge up before they go home. So the DC fast charging is really largely for the businesses, so that people coming from far away can charge while they are shopping or eating. So the projects that we're working on now is we're working on a climate action plan, which focuses on the carbon emissions of the entire town. And for Montclair, the residential segment is by far the largest carbon emitter. So what we want to do is we want to help influence the public to adopt electric vehicles more quickly, switch their homes to heat pumps and electric heating. And basically, the fundamental idea is that there's one way to fight human-caused climate change, and that's to stop burning fossil fuels. Currently, how do you stop burning fossil fuels? You electrify everything. So with that in mind, that is kind of a motto, electrify everything. You want to electrify your transportation, your heating, HVAC, everything that you can, just anything that burns fossil fuels, you want to stop doing that and then start using electricity, which can be produced by solar and wind, and you can purchase renewable electricity and that kind of thing. So as part of the climate action plan, fleet electrification is a major component for the township, which overall is actually a small proportion of our town's carbon emissions. So, to delve deeper into that, because this has some actionable steps that you can start taking tomorrow, there's kind of a grassroots approach, and then there's an ordinance top-down approach. And I'll talk about both of those. So grassroots approach. Step one, get a list of the township vehicles or talk to whoever has that list. And so, for example, here are some of the vehicles that we have, and in the building department, they really like Ford Escapes. So they have these Ford Escapes from various years. The code enforcement has a Dodge Durango, Ford Ranger, Ford Explorer, etc. And they actually have a hybrid there. What we want to do is help them switch to all electric. So what we've done is we've created an EV buying guide that's actually based on the Plugstar website. And if you go to plugstar.com, you can find a really solid buying guide. There's also other buying guides from like the Sierra Club and other places, but we're using Plugstar for now. And what we're planning to do is bring this buying guide to the departments and really just help educate them. But when we talk to the department, what we plan to do is first begin with a question. What do they understand about electric vehicles? Because everyone is starting at a different place. And so if you just step into that room and just launch into your spiel, you might turn a lot of people off. So starting by asking them where they at in their understanding of electric vehicles, one, allows them to feel like their opinion and their voice is a meaningful part of the conversation. And it also gives you very important information as to where you need to start. Do you need to start by defining what an electric vehicle is? Or do they know what they are? Have they been looking? And do they already have a sense of which vehicles they might want to use? So start with that question, bring in some sort of guide that gives them options. And what I plan to do is separate it by, here are the SUVs, here are the trucks, and then here are the sedans. And break it down like that, because whatever they currently use is probably what they're going to want to replace it with. It's unlikely you're going to convince someone who currently drives a SUV that they should downsize to a sedan. So you want to bring a one-to-one match to them to show them what is available. Now, these vehicles are available. However, due to supply chain issues, a lot of times there's a long lead time that is necessary between buying it and when it appears. So helping get people in the mindset of, let's make a long-term plan and understand when we need to replace these vehicles before they need to be replaced, before they break down. So we can place an order for one, and then by the time it comes in, we're ready to replace it. So that's kind of the grassroots part, talking with the individual department heads and really getting their buy-in is a crucial component to success. The other thing you can do, and this came out in July of 2021, is there is an environmental commission. You can write an ordinance and have your town council pass this ordinance that is kind of connected to the state law that already exists. So in 2021, there's this model ordinance that came out that you are actually only allowed to make variations on one section because it does relate to the state law that talks about EV charging station or new parking lots and EV charging stations in a certain percentage of the parking spaces in those parking lots, as well as make-ready spots. And make-ready spots are spots that have the wiring but don't actually have the EV charging station because maybe there isn't the demand for that yet. Maybe that extra cost will be too much. But the time to put the wiring in is when you're putting in the parking lot. So that is always going to be the cheapest time to put that wiring in. So you definitely want to do it then. And then at that point, once you write the ordinance, and generally you want to get as much buy-in as possible while you're writing it. So you want to talk to the town councilors about their concerns and anyone else in your township who you think would be good to talk about, maybe the planning, the zoning group. And then you can submit that to your town council and have them pass that ordinance. In Montclair, for example, we've been an EV-friendly town for a long time, and we've been guided that we don't really need this ordinance because there is no barrier to EV installations or EV charging station installations. Anyone can do that. If they need any permits, it's just for the electrical. There's no special permitting needed for the electric vehicle charging station. So, but you may want to pass it just to kind of get it on your town councilor's mind and that kind of thing. So another great resource that lists all of the EV charging infrastructure incentives that Doug listed. You can go to the New Jersey DEP Drive Green website, and they have a PDF that summarizes all of the state and federal incentives. And when you go to talk to the department heads, if you decide to do kind of the grassroots thing and talk to department heads in your township, definitely bring the incentives because cost is always going to come up. You already know it's going to come up. So have those incentives right there with you. Make sure you've read through them so that you know which ones are appropriate for what situations, because there are some that are specific to fleets, and you're going to want to be able to bring those directly to the people who are buying these vehicles. The federal incentive was just adjusted by the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. And so, but I think that was already touched upon. And then here's just some information about there's a difference between Tesla superchargers and the DC fast chargers that all the other vehicles can use. All the other vehicles can use the SAE combo, which is also referred to as CCS. That's the standard that was developed by the US government in conjunction with BMW, Chevy, Ford, etc. And then Tesla has their own charging standard, which they use. And I believe about 70% of electric vehicles on the road today are Teslas. So it's interesting when you hear states not including Tesla in their funding and including them in their counting of the fast charging stations. The majority of people who drive electric vehicles today, and especially of who take road trips today, the vast majority do own that make of car. But they have also agreed to open their charging stations up to other vehicles that use CCS eventually. So how do you find a charger? Just some kind of basics. You can find it by PlugShare. I recommend just going to that one first, but if you go to chargepoint.com, electrifyamerica.com, ChargeWay, ChargeHub, there's all kinds of places that that show you where the charging stations are. And then here's just a couple of maps from some of the road trips I've taken. The one on the left is from 2016. I went 21,111 miles. That was not on a 0SR. That was in my Tesla, but anyway, actually that map is from one of my zero electric motorcycle trips, riding down the coast and going almost 4 corners. And then on the right side, that was the 21,111 miles in the Tesla Model 3. had an amazing summer, went to some national parks. And, you know, so I'm a science teacher. I like evidence. And so early when people were saying, oh, you can't take road trips in EVs, then I went and took some road trips in EVs so that me and all my friends who also drive electric vehicles could say, look, I know someone who did this. It's enjoyable, it's easy, and it's getting easier because the infrastructure is expanding quickly. So thank you for your attention, and hope that you found that helpful, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much. Really wonderful information coming from all three of you speakers. And shockingly to nobody is that we have quite a few questions. I will, the staff are going to read these questions to the speakers and they will answer. Just so everybody knows who's attending, we will, if we don't get to them all, and when we need to cut off in about 25 minutes, we will email the presenters and then email the answers to some of these, okay? So in advance, I'll try. We have a question from Kathleen about do we know anything about severe duty vehicles and EV capability? She says her town DPW says Jeeps, for example, are not capable of severe duty like snow plowing. Anybody? They want to take that one on?
So I think I don't have specific information on that, but I think now that the Ford F-150 Lightning, the electric Ford 150 is available, I think that would be appropriate for that. And Rivian also has a truck that is available to buy. I think there's like a 1-year lead time in delivery, but there are more trucks that are heavy duty that are available. So I think whoever you talk to, you may want to talk to them and ask them if that does meet their criteria, because they may be talking about like a Ford F-350 or something like that. But there are definitely more variety of trucks and electric vehicles available today than there were, and that's constantly changing as well. It's
Right.
expanding.
That'll be getting updated all the time. Absolutely.
And this is a good argument where that wouldn't have been the case 2 years ago. Now you have the Lightning that is available. So, you know, if I was in your shoes, having a conversation with your DPW, I'd say, hey, wait, right, like let's do some work and wait, because the long-term cost of going electric is going to actually save the DPW money. So I think that's kind of the argument, and you'll see this constant thread of you need to do more homework, whether you're a municipality or a resident, to figure out how to go electric. But once you make that transition, it's going to pay off in dividends. And then this is also where the experience of driving an EV, or even if you're the experience at the Port Authority, is the truck drivers fight for the electric trucks, right? Because they're so much cleaner. And it's actually, if you're a truck driver breathing in diesel fumes every day, you want to go electric. So that's part of the experience we should be thinking about too, is it's not just a cost question. It's not even just an environmental question. It's a user experience too.
Sure. And a health question for the users, of course, too. Right. Exactly.
Big time.
Yeah. Thank you. Somebody had asked about the maintenance costs that you cited, Doug, have anything to do with the fact that most of these EVs are new? Are there going to be increased costs as these cars get older?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to think of this is, yes, there are more EVs on the road than there were 10 years ago. But, if you look at the EVs that have been on the road, and even just the experience of folks that, that drive Priuses, you have much longer reliability the more you're moving away from having small explosions happen in the hood of your car to power your vehicle. And then in terms of the question of the cost of the battery, yes, the batteries don't last forever. There are obviously you want to, quote unquote, take good care of the battery, prevent battery degradation. But, if you think of the cost of the clutch and the automatic transmission, and kind of the endless amounts of things that go wrong in a traditional internal combustion engine as it gets older and older, the battery is a significant expense. But, again, we have to be looking at what the internal combustion engine is, and the cost savings come up really good when you're looking at an ICE vehicle versus an electric vehicle in the long term.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Do we know of any towns that are offering incentives for residents to go EV? For example, discount on a rebate or certain type of charger? I don't think I've heard of that, but maybe you have?
I don't know of any municipalities that are offering incentives. We covered utilities have some incentives for residents. And at the BPU, they have the Charge of New Jersey program that has the rebate for vehicles and a rebate for chargers.
Terrific. Doug, I see you were going to answer this question about how to find grants for the municipality.
Yeah, I started to answer this question, I believe, from Jennifer, and then I pressed the wrong button. But this is where it pays to it pays to charge up program, and I included that link in one of the other responses. That's where you should go to. I mean, this is where there are generous incentives for municipalities for the cost of the level 2 chargers that didn't exist, right? And so this is also where Eve was referencing the national environment, basically the NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. New Jersey will have $100 million over the course of the next 5 years to spend on increasing our EV charging network. And obviously we want to do that for the fastest chargers, but having more money to help downtowns and municipalities to have centrally located chargers will be critical. This is something that we're also advocating the Murphy administration put in more dollars to do this, right? We have utility programs that are doing this. We have some of the federal dollars, but if you go and PlugShare right now, there's not as many EV chargers that are publicly available that are kind of in every town. We want to get to that place where EV chargers are as commonplace as a 7-Eleven or the Wawa.
Okay, Rick has a question for you, Ben, directly. He said that on your list of EVs in your town, there is no heavy vehicles like dump trucks, snow plows, street sweepers. Do you have a policy that you're working on for that?
Yeah, we're working with what we've got. So basically the idea behind this, well, one of the ideas behind this is that I've been doing EV advocacy for over a decade, and I've been standing in parking lots talking to people about electric vehicles, since like 2009 or something. And basically what really works is getting butts in seats. And so getting people inside these electric vehicles is what works. So one of the things I'm hoping will happen as a secondary impact is as these people drive EVs for their work, right? So maybe their department buys one and they're like, all right, well, I wasn't part of this buying decision, but I have to use it now. And they get to use it and they're like, oh, wait a minute, I love this. This is a wonderful vehicle, which is actually the response that the vast majority of people have who drive EVs. And then they'll think about getting them for their home. So in terms of, we just want to get whatever vehicles are available now, which has expanded. It used to only be sedans. Then it became sedans and SUVs. And now we've got sedans, SUVs, and pickup trucks. And so to me, that's a great start. When there are electric dump trucks available, then we'll definitely push to get those. But at the moment, they're just not really available on a large scale. So I feel like at this point, we want to focus on what we can change now. And then as those things become available, expand. And at that point, the whole zeitgeist of the situation will be totally different. If you have more people in your town using EVs, then you won't have to work as hard to convince people, because the chatter around the office will be, hey, I've got this EV. Now everyone else wants to use it because it's the best car in our fleet. So yeah, so right now we don't have an answer for the heavy duty stuff, but hopefully that'll be coming along soon.
Yeah. We've all been hearing about, the big trucks that are coming down the pike in production and stuff. So I would assume that a lot of those are going to be answered as time goes. Thank you. Linda was asking
before we move on
about
to the next question, I just wanted to emphasize something here, because this is where, for environmental commissioners, you can kind of wonder, it's like, is there an impact for the events that we put on, for the Earth Day celebrations, for the Drive Electric Weeks, right? And this is where, obviously, my daughter has lots of opinions on this. But I just want to, this is Elsa. I just want to emphasize how important those events are, right? Because driving's believing. A lot of the early adopters, and Ben, you can kind of speak to this. It's just awesome. Like, it's a great experience, and people are willing to kind of put up with some crazy things a decade ago on charging problems. And now, you don't, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to have an EV. It's a lot easier to have a superior product. And that's kind of the thing here where, the old expression is seeing and believing, driving is believing. And so the more people we can get behind the wheel, and then also once you're an EV driver, you tell your friends, right? So that's part of this, is just trying to normalize this. So I'm going to go on mute because Elsa will jump in with more.
Thank you. That's terrific. So Linda had asked a question that probably I know other people are probably thinking about. We're talking about batteries, lithium, disposable. What do you do when this battery does go? How is there progress on recycling these batteries once they've done their duty, if you will, or lived out their life?
Yeah, so that's always been a big question. And now that EVs have been around for a certain amount of time, and also other lithium-based vehicles. But so Redwood Materials is one of several companies that's doing it. It just happens to be the one that I know about. And they are recycling batteries to the tune of 95% reclaimed materials.
Wow.
So now there are companies that are actively doing this today. This is not like a in the future thing, but they're doing this today. And so EV batteries are being recycled. Now, not just EVs, but they're also taking those, what they're called, hoverboards, electric scooters, like large and small batteries. But the big one for us is they are taking EV batteries. They're able to get the vast majority of the materials out of it, because those are very expensive, very difficult to acquire materials. And so that kind of closing of the loop is happening already. And so it'll only happen more, because again, batteries are extremely expensive. These are very valuable materials. So you can bet that they're going to be reclaimed.
That's great.
And this is such an important point, because I just wanted to note, Redwood is not exactly a household name, but Redwood is based in California, hence Redwoods. California has the largest EV market. They've recently expanded to Nevada, right? So it's just, and they're looking at an East Coast expansion. And the reason is because the market, the more EVs you have, means the more EV batteries you have. And there's actually a set of bills in front of the Senate Environment Committee that Senator Bob Smith has brought up to basically create an EV battery recycling program here in New Jersey, because that's what we need. We need to create kind of certainty and a market to be able to say, once your battery is done, we're going to reuse it, and not just reuse it for vehicles, but also for storage capacity on the grid. So this is where we kind of talk about how EVs aren't just vehicles; they're batteries on wheels, and that is incredibly true. And we need to figure out how to reuse those batteries. So this is kind of that virtuous cycle of figuring out how to create more EV batteries and create an economy around recycling them.
Yeah, that's great, really great, because that's certainly something we all have to be worried about. I had a couple of questions. I'm going to kind of combine them from Lee and from Richard. Will there be funding and grants for HOAs, like condo communities, to put in chargers? And what about, do you know of any, and could the same thing maybe work with a 55 and over retirement community? And do you know of any that maybe are doing that?
Yeah, so this gets into one, in the EV law, it talks about having mandates for a multifamily dwelling, and there are incentives through, again, it pays to plug in through the BPU program that specifically focus multi-unit dwelling. This is probably the area that needs the most help, though, because it's not just a question of getting the charger itself, it's also about that interconnection. In the New Jersey Apartment Association, Charge EVCs had ongoing conversations. They are kind of realizing they need to provide this as an amenity. And so again, my advice is, if you're in a HOA, right, especially if you know people on the board, is to say, look, like, I want to go electric. And I'm sure if you talk to your neighbors, people will say, we want this option. We obviously want to be more dependent upon policy than just kind of that grassroots organizing. So again, this is a good example where there are rebates. but there needs to be more to make it easier for multifamily dwelling, whether you're 55 plus or in an HOA or in an apartment building, et cetera. You know, we have some incentives, but we want more.
And
That's
to build off of that and to answer another question as well. So so just down the street from me, someone is in an HOA. It's a group of basically townhomes, and they bought an electric car, and they ran their cable to their car, and they got in trouble because you can't have a cable lying across a sidewalk. And so they've been working with their HOA saying like, hey, we want to install our own charging station. We're happy to pay for it, but like, what can we do here? Because there's no garage, there's no individual parking lot. It's one large parking lot for all of the townhomes. So fortunately, the HOA came back with, you're not the only one who's going to want an electric car. So what we're going to do is we'll look into just putting, there are 12 units, so putting in 6 charging stations. Each one has two plugs on it, and they're looking into that. Now, that has run into its own kind of snags, but basically, yes, there are still some challenges with people who live in condos, multi-unit dwellings, any place they don't have a dedicated place to park their car, people with street parking. So those are people who might end up using DC fast charging on more of a regular basis, unless they can get charging at work. So, you know, kind of the flipping the script, if you can't charge at home, but you can charge at work, then during the week, when you commute to work, that's where you charge up. And then when you're at home, you're not charging, but you don't need to charge every single night anyway. So, so there's a few ways to solve those problems, but it just is a challenge if you don't have a dedicated parking lot or garage or something like that. And the incentives that they're looking into using are the same incentives that we've shown you, the ones that are available. I don't know that there are any that are specific to HOAs or something like that, but there is money available for charging equipment.
Sorry, I muted myself. Sheila, do you have any others that you want to read? There's a lot of questions I don't want to miss, or Cheryl, feel free to jump on in and.
Sure, I see one here from where someone's asking that he said he's heard that the range of an electric vehicle is significantly reduced during cold or sub-freezing temperatures. Is that true?
So there is some range loss in cold temperatures. Some of that is just due to the cold and thermodynamics, the laws of physics. You can come to my class sometime. I teach physics and tell you all about it. But a lot of that is actually due to the fact that you are using a heater, which is using electricity. And so you actually have some control over that. So there is some, range loss. It's not permanent. It's just for that drive. But again, if you have a range of over 200 miles and you're going 40 miles in one day, it's not going to be a problem. You can also, if you happen to be on a road trip and you drive into a cold area and you're using your heater more and that kind of thing, then you can conserve your charge by driving more slowly. So the biggest thing that eats up range is wind resistance. So you can drive more slowly, but you can also turn off the heater from the air. And if you have heated seats, you can use that, and you can bundle up or something like that. So like you actually have quite a bit of control over your range by being thoughtful about it if necessary. But like I said, I've been taking these crazy road trips, like 10, 20,000 miles in one summer, and I've never had to deal with any of those things. And I've never run out of charge while on one of these road trips. I've come close, but not quite.
Here's another one. What are the utilities doing to upgrade their systems to handle this increased load?
Yeah, so this is a really important question. I think it's actually directly linked not only to what utilities are doing, but also just what our electric grid looks like, right? And so the classic question is, well, if you're just plugging in your EV, isn't that as polluting as gas? And the quick answer is no. EVs are 70% cleaner than your traditional internal combustion engine, and that number will go up as we look to green the electric grid. And that being said, when you are charging overnight, that is the best possible time to be charging because of the that's low peak demand. The hope is that when I say green the electric grid, that means specifically bringing on more clean renewable sources of energy, i.e. large solar, as well as residential solar. Offshore wind is a huge component of this, at least from New Jersey's perspective. Onshore wind, we're part of a regional electric grid, which goes all the way down to North Carolina and all the way out to Illinois. So Midwest wind can do a lot to help to green our grid. And as part of that, obviously, utility companies do need to upgrade the grid. And there's actually a big backlog right now on renewable energy programs through the regional electric grid to get them interconnected. And so I'd say that's probably, there's many kind of challenges we're facing, but, certainly if you go to install a charging station, especially if you're in South Jersey, Atlantic City Electric is not as good as this as they should. It's harder to install solar. It's harder even sometimes to install an EV charging station, depending on where you are in the Atlantic City Electric service area. So this is where some of the investments in the Inflation Reduction Act to strengthen the grid and to be able to prepare for the growth in electric use, which we hope to see, are critical because the grid is old, and it's not reliable. And I kind of say this, not in an electric future, right? But like right now. So on Christmas Eve, there was a warning, and some of you may have seen it, saying reduce your energy use. And that's because the fossil fuel infrastructure basically got hit by some of the extreme weather events that were going on in the grid. And that's a reminder, kind of what happened in Texas, the extreme version, but the grid is being challenged because of climate change. And that's why it's actually so important that we work to green the grid, not to double down on internal combustion engines or not to double down on fossil fuel gas.
And one other thing to add to that, people are concerned about this happening like right now, but the fact that we charge electric vehicles overnight in general, and the grid has the most use during the day, EVs are not actually directly challenging the peak load of the grid. So, so that actually buys us a little time to upgrade the grid and do the things that Doug was talking about. So if you're talking with someone who's really concerned about this, you can allay some of those concerns in the short term by saying, well, look, you don't charge your EV at the same time that you come home and start cooking and watching TV and stuff.
Terrific. Thank you. All right,
So here's an interesting one. Someone is asking about what the impact on car insurance would be. Is there a savings involved at all? Is it treated at all differently?
I think car insurance is more based on the cost of the car and what it would cost to replace it. So that is kind of disconnected from the power source. Initially, when there was a lot of uncertainty about EVs and there wasn't much experience with them, I think insurance companies were thinking like they may need to charge a different amount, but I believe it's primarily just based on replacement costs and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Here's a question. Is there a reason why certain home EV charging stations are excluded from the state rebate program, ChargePoint or Wallbox, for example?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? What's excluded from the state?
Is there a reason why certain home EV charging stations are excluded from the state rebate program? And they're pointing to ChargePoint or Wallbox, which I guess are excluded.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer, but that should go to the BPU though, right? Because there's, I assume there's a reason, although it would be nice if they kind of articulated. Eve, I don't know if you have more background on that, but There's been obviously some hiccups along the way, and it would be helpful to have the BPU explain kind of what's eligible and what isn't.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we know the rebates, the federal rebates are only good for cars that are manufactured or whatever the word is in America. So it limits, as of right now, especially, it's limited to Tesla and a couple of Ford vehicles, I guess Rivians, but so yeah, you can make sure before, you're checking out what's available in BPU, and we've shared a bunch of websites and a bunch of links to help you find this stuff. And we will be sharing all the links that have come in the chat and the Q&A with you after. We might have time for one or two more questions. Sheila, you have any that are catching your eye?
Yes. Can the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program be layered on through the grants discussed tonight when purchasing EVs and EV chargers for municipalities?
So I assume this is a little bit through like the ESIP program through BPU. My quick answer is that it should be. I don't know if it is. So again, this is another example where, as ECs, right, you're looking to kind of go green collectively, and that means you're thinking about energy efficiency and you're thinking about EVs. I don't know if there is a linkage, but again, this is something that kind of makes me think the BPU should be working to link them. You should get more credits if you're doing all of the above.
Yeah.
I don't know if it exists right now, although if anyone wants to jump in with more info, please do.
So I have another question. There is some talk that fires from lithium batteries are harder to put out and will take more water resources, and fumes are more toxic than regular car fires per some fire officials. This person is wondering if you could comment on that, if any of you have feedback.
Yes, they do take much more water. And I've been involved in some trainings of fire departments where we talk to them about how to put out lithium battery fires, and basically it's just water and a lot of water. And so fortunately, as noted before with the statistics, it is far less likely that they will catch on fire than a gas-powered car. But when they do, it definitely takes a long time to put out. So one of the things, I spoke to a firefighter in Vermont who was very up to date on the latest in firefighting. And he said that in Europe, they actually have developed a system like a truck with basically a huge bathtub in it. And they pick up a lithium battery car that's on fire and just put it into the bathtub. And that particular person in Vermont was like, we got a lot of ponds around here. If a car catches fire around here, we're just going to push it into a pond. But it just takes more time, and it takes a lot of water. So that is the situation.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Jeffrey has an interesting question about, are there any proven options to charge vehicles using power from the streetlight bulbs? 120 volts isn't a lot, but curious if there's anything out there. He's doing a streetscape program in Somerville and wondering, and it came up. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
You can do that. I mean, it's possible. It's just that convincing the town, if you're just going to put an outlet there, you can't track who's using it. You can't charge people for using it. So it's just going to cost the town money, and convincing the town to just give out free electricity is often a non-starter. But you could potentially, I guess you could put up a pole that has an EV charging station on it, even if it's just like a level 1 or something. But I haven't seen anything like that. I don't think it's necessarily worth the trouble to do that. You really want them to be thoughtfully located in parking garages and that kind of thing.
Thank you. Rosella points out that in Electrify America charges in Pennsylvania, like at the Sheetz gas stations, and doesn't seem to see a lot happening in the New Jersey gas stations. Any
So
comment on that and why?
yeah, I'll
Is that-
take that one.
Okay,
So in New Jersey, we're actually seeing Shell, who owns, well, they own a company formerly called Green Lots, but now it's called Shell Recharge. So Shell gas stations are putting in their Shell charging stations, which is really smart. They're sort of seeing, oh, these car manufacturers are pivoting, people are pivoting, they're also making that pivot. So we're seeing it a little bit. It's also really smart to put it at a Sheetz where people have to run into the store for 10 minutes. So I think you'll see that a bit more, but I also just wanted to quickly echo something that I said quickly in my presentation, which is the fueling patterns are going to look different than they look with gas powered vehicles. So we're not going to need charging stations at every gas station. There's not going to be demand for that, because now we have four gas stations on each corner in some places. So it'll be interesting to see that transition.
absolutely. Well, thank you. We are really out of time, and I just want to remind the attendees that we will read over the rest of these questions that we didn't get an answer and get answers for you. Ben, Doug, and Eve, somebody just asked if it was okay if we share your emails with the attendees. So if they want to reach out, okay, we will do that. So we will share the chat, we will share the Q&A, we will share the recording, we will share the slides. So it takes a couple days for Zoom to process this. So look for it about the end of the week, this week. But I really want to thank Doug and Eve and Ben. It's been a tremendous amount of information coming at us, and really the interest and the idea that this electric network is really expanding in New Jersey is really exciting. And I'm hoping environmental commissions can really get on this and help their municipality figure out, like what Ben has done and Doug and Eve are happy to help people figure out, is to get some of these municipalities on board. Because it has to be like an individual, like you said, go and speak to these people and really get on the page with them and help them understand, and not fight with them, as you know. So again, thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate this evening,
very
and
much.
we will be in touch.
Thank you.
That was great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Good night. Thank you so much.
night.